Section 4.3, Introduction to Factoring. To factor a polynomial is to express it as a product. Terms with common factors. So recall the distributive property. It works in two ways. If you want to multiply, you have a times b plus c. You distribute the multiplication and you get ab plus ac. So a is multiplied times both b and c. If you want to do it backwards, if you want to factor, if you have ab plus ac, there is a factor of a in both terms. You can factor it out, and when you do, you are left with a times the quantity b plus c. The first step to any factoring is to factor out the greatest common factor. Factor out the greatest common factor. So in this example, we're looking and trying to determine the greatest common factor. 16 and 24, the largest number that divides evenly into both of those is 8. X squared and x, both of them have a factor of x, and the smallest exponent that x is raised to is to the first power. So 8x is our common factor. Think of it this way. This first one has x times x. The second one has just x. So what's the largest number of x's they have in common? Just 1. So if you factor out 8x, what are you left with? We want to put a sum in the parentheses so that when we multiply with the distributive property, we get what we started with. 8x times what will give us 16x squared? Well, 8 times 2 gives us 16, and x times x gives us x squared. So 8x times 2x gives us 16x squared. Plus, we want to put something here so that when we multiply by 8x, we get 24x. 8x times what gives us 24x? 3. And sure enough, if you multiply through, you will get 16x squared plus 24x. You always want to be able to, when you factor, you want to be able to multiply and get what you started with. Look at this one. We're looking for the greatest common factor. So we're looking for the largest number that will go into 12, 20, and 8. The largest number that will go into each of those individually is 4. Now we're looking for our x's. So we have x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, and x squared. So what is the largest number of x's that these terms have in common? That's the smallest exponent to which x is raised. It's got to be 2, x squared. And finally, y. We have y to the 4th, y to the 3rd, y. The smallest exponent that y is raised to is y to the 1st. So that's what they have in common. If you factor out 4x squared y, what do you have left? 4 times what gives you 12? 3. X squared times what will give you x to the 4th? We're trying to figure out what to put in here so that when we multiply, we get 12x to the 4th, y to the 4th. So we need 3, we need x squared, and we need y cubed. Now when we multiply, we'll get 12x to the 4th, y to the 4th. Minus, what are we going to put here? So that when we multiply by our 4x squared y, we get 20x cubed y cubed. So we need a 5, we need an x, and we need a y squared. Finally, we need to put something here so that when we multiply, we get 8x squared y. 4 times what will give you 8? 2. X squared y, we already have those, so that's it. This is our complete answer. I'll write it without all the colors and the lines. So it's 4, 3x squared y cubed minus 5xy squared plus 2. And if we multiply through using the distributive property, you'll see that we get what we started with. 12x to the fourth y to the fourth minus 20x cubed y cubed plus 8x squared y. When you have four terms, you want to do something called factoring by grouping. Let's introduce factoring by grouping by having this problem. Notice that this problem is partially factored. It is almost factored, in fact, because we have a common factor of y plus 3 here and y plus 3 here. So we can factor out that y plus 3. Just take it out and put it at the front. When you factor out the y plus 3, what is left? X minus, take out the y plus 3, you have 7. And if you use the distributive property and multiply, you can get y plus 3 times x, same thing. You can get minus y plus 3 times 7, same thing. So we have factored. Here's another one that has a common factor that is a binomial. X squared plus 5 here, x squared plus 5 here. That's our common factor. So if we factor out the x squared plus 5, what can we put in parentheses so that when we multiply, we get what we started with? Well, if you took out the x squared plus 5, you'll be left with 4x. If you took out the x squared plus 5 here, you'll be left with minus 9. And so we have factored. But these problems now won't be set up quite as neatly. You can recognize factor by grouping problems because they have 4 terms. So what you want to do, it's called grouping, so you want to group the first 2 terms together and group the second 2 terms together. Look at the first grouping, the first 2 terms, and identify the common factor. Y squared plus xy, the common factor is y. If you factor out the y, what do you have left? Y plus x. There's plus 7x, y plus 7x, so we're going to say plus. Now, we want to factor out the common factor here also. So I see 7y and 7x, the common factor is 7. And we have y plus x. So look what happened. We now have a common factor of y plus x in the first grouping and the second grouping. So we can factor that y plus x out. What do you have left when you factor out the y plus x? You have y plus 7. And that's it. We factored it. 4 terms indicates it's a good factor by grouping problem. Group the first 2, group the last 2. Look for the common factor, x squared, y minus 5. What's our common factor? 4, y minus 5. We hope that when we group this first group and the second group that we have a common factor. And that's what we have. We have y minus 5 as our common factor. So factor it out. What is left? X squared plus 4. Now, I have to say, looking at this, I think I'm through, but I should look at that because it's got an x squared in it and say, can I factor that? No, I can't. So that's it. We're through. We have factored by grouping. Look at this one. Let's group the first 2 together and the last 2 together. So looking at the first 2, we're looking for the common factor. They both are divisible by 5. You have a squared what do you have left when you factor out 5a squared? A plus 2. Now every time we have had the same thing left in the second group. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to have the same thing left, because if I do, I will have the common factor that I can factor out. So I'm determined to make a plus 2 be the thing that is left once I factor out whatever it is I'm going to factor. The only way I can have a plus 2 left is to factor out minus 7. Because minus 7 times a will give us minus 7a, and minus 7 times plus 2 will give us minus 14. I have to factor out a minus 7 so that I have a common factor of a plus 2. Factor out the a plus 2, I have left 5a squared minus 7. Once again, I kind of look at that and think, can I factor that? No, I can't. So I have factored by grouping. Group the first two, group the last two, factor out the common factor, and you've got it. That's it for this section. Check the next video if you need to go on ahead.